coming on. I can't wait. I love it when it comes round. It's one of the great things about our system. We've been joined live in the studio by the Leader of the Opposition and possibly the next Prime Minister of Australia, Peter Dutton. How are you, Peter?
Mate, I'm very well, thank you. Good to be with you guys.
Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Now, I know when we interview the PM, we say Prime Minister or Minister. How would you like to be addressed?
I get addressed in lots of ways. Just Peter would be great.
Peter, PD, can I call you PD?
PD.
P Duddy?
Maybe not. Maybe not. That might take off.
Now, we've got you here. Before we get into politics, you made a big announcement yesterday, Roo. Would you like to elaborate, please?
Yeah, very exciting. Off the back of Matty's match on the weekend and a decade of really hard work, it was great to meet with you, Mr. Dutton, yesterday and to receive the support of the coalition in the form of $3 million over the next 3 years for Matty Riewoldt's vision. Yeah, which is amazing.
Thank you.
Mate, it is, it's an amazing legacy that your family's created, and every Victorian knows about it, every Australian should know about it, and it's a focus on a rare condition, rare disease group and type, and there's not a lot of support out there for families who are confronted with that news. And I think yesterday what was demonstrated to us was that, you want to help people help themselves, and what Matty's vision has done and what you have picked up needs to be supported. And you've fundraised a lot of money over the last 10 years, but, my sense is that it's exhausting for the family. And speaking to your mum and dad, and Alex as well, your brother, who are just stoic, I think it's right that we tip in some money, and hopefully there's more research that's conducted, but also more outreach to families, who are going through the darkest days.
Well, we're very grateful. It is not-for-profits, bloody tough out there, so very, very grateful for the coalition support. So thank you.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Good on you. It's a great thing you've done, and I know how happy it made Roo and so many people out there, and we look forward to it. You're talking to our audience right now who are honest, hard-working people. How can you help?
Well, Mick, we've announced a 25-cent a litre cut in fuel. So if you're filling up a Ranger or a Hilux, it's about $20 a week. And if you're in a two-car family, or if you've got a bludgeoning teenage child whose car you're filling up as well, maybe 3 cars. And we thought that was the best way that you could provide support. And it's not just to families, it's to pensioners who got nothing out of the budget. It's to a broader sort of society or economic impact, so to tradies and to delivery truck drivers. And we've got to somehow pull the cost pressure out of the economy. A 30% increase in the cost of groceries over the last 3 years. People are being smashed. And
what's the answer there? How do you take on those two giants?
Well, it's not just the two giants, mate. Like if you have a look at what's happened to your own gas bill and electricity bill at home, electricity's gone up by about 32%. Gas has gone up by 34% just over the last 3 years. And that's because of the government's energy policy. Can't pretend that the renewables only thing is going to work. It's not going to keep the lights on, and it's going to keep driving up the cost of electricity and gas. So that's what's flowed on to the farmers' budget, and the IGA store is paying more for their electricity. You go into a supermarket, they've got rows and rows of freezers and cold storage. We went to a supermarket only a few weeks ago. The bloke there was telling us his power bill has gone up by $40,000 a month, right? And it was a big butcher sort of, fruit market, supermarket, but, it wasn't as big as a Coles or Woolies. Now, he just says, look, I can absorb some of that, but I've got to pass that on. And that's why we're paying more for groceries. And so our gas plan, which is about making sure that gas is for Australians and we can bring prices down, is good for families, but it happens to be good for the economy as well.
So what's the actual policy, can I ask? Because I hear nuclear on one side, I'm hearing your gas policy, I'm hearing cheap petrol. What is it? What are you bringing to the table?
The assistance here and now is through the petrol, so we think that can make a difference. We can get gas into the system by the end of this calendar year. So at the moment, we export a lot of natural gas, which is a good thing because we make a lot of money out of it as a country, pays for roads and schools and rail, etc. But we export a lot, which we want to do into the future, but we also have a lot that's exported that we think could come back into the country for domestic use, for Australian use. So if we increase supply here, we can bring down the price that it takes to construct. Like BlueScope, for example, the biggest steel manufacturers in the country, obviously used to make this building, housing, bridges, hospitals. they say that this will be a game changer for them because it will reduce the cost of producing that steel with electricity. And so it has an impact right across the economy. And natural gas is a big ingredient in the manufacture of electricity as well.
It's a real head scratcher for a lot of Australians that we have such high prices considering all our natural resources.
But about 3 times the cost of electricity in parts of the US or the UK or Canada. That's the difference here.
So the solution is getting to the actual root of the issue rather than just here's a rebate.
Well, you can keep giving people $150 a year as the Prime Minister's done in the budget, or 70 cents a week in a tax cut in 15 months' time, but it's just a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. And the fact is that we've got to fix the core of the problem, and that's what we're doing. So we've got the short-term help, hopefully through the petrol tax cut. We bring in gas into the system, and by the late 2030s, nuclear comes into the system, which is about a 44% reduction on the cost that we're paying now.
Where's that going? Canberra? A big reactor coming out of Canberra? Where are you putting that?
You're pitching that? Well, only on 7 sites across the country where there's a coal-fired power station now that's coming to the end of life. And when you talk to those coal workers, they know there are no other jobs. You can't set up enough coffee shops in those areas to employ those blokes when the coal mine shuts. And so if you want the data centres, which is what's happening in the US, all of Apple, all of Oracle, all of these companies are talking to nuclear power companies about providing a reliable, cheaper source of energy to keep those big companies going. And those data centres aren't coming here at the moment. We want them here.
Yep.
Part of the cost of living is when you're on permanent medicine, it's very expensive, but the PBS is fantastic for that. Medicare's been incredible too. Will dentistry ever be on Medicare, do you think?
I think it's a very expensive option, and I know that Labor and Liberal have looked at it over the years. We put about $9.4 billion into Medicare in our policies. We've had a big push on mental health, which I think is particularly important for younger people. And dental health is incredibly important to your overall health. So there are programs which have been funded, but not a universal dental care program like you go to the GP with your Medicare card. And maybe there's a way in which we can do it, but it does cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
We've got a recalcitrant president of the United States at the moment. We've got Chinese warships parked off our Queensland coast. How are you going to keep us safe?
Oh, mate, thank God for Virgin pilots who can tell us what's going on. So what is happening?
What's the plan? 8 subs that we get 30 years from now?
Well, we've got a great capacity in our Collins class subs at the moment, and we should actually be proud of them. And Australians don't know enough about the work they do, but they work alongside the Americans and the Brits. You can hear them rattling down the coast. But they're going to be out of work because they're a diesel electric, and the diesel electric can be detected. And the technology now that's available to scan every square centimetre of the surface of the water means that they do become redundant. So the nuclear submarines are stealth, they're safe, and they can last literally for months under the water without having to come up to recharge as the diesel electric do. So they are actually going to be a great bit of kit and very helpful. As we know, you can't keep peace and you can't keep an adversary at bay if you don't have strength, and peace is only achieved through strength. That's what history's demonstrated to us. So we need to put a lot more into defence, Mick, is the answer to your question, and we propose to do that. But we can't be blind to the reality of what's happening at the moment. We live in a pretty uncertain world, and as the PM says, and I agree with him, this is the most precarious period since 1945.
You and the PM, and I'm happy to hear this, have outside of politics a reasonably a good relationship. Is there a policy of his that you admire or that you support that you think is where you both share common ground?
Well, there are lots of things where and people don't see it, and it's not sort of the song and dance that the media want to report, but in Parliament there'd be 60%, 70% of stuff that we agree on, and it just goes through to the keeper, and people don't hear about it. So there are bits and pieces that we agree on. There are differences of opinion where you'll have a respectful debate and we can argue about it. I think the policies that they've engaged in over the last couple of years, the decisions they've made in the budgets, I think have really hurt families. And I think here in Victoria, people get a taste of what a long-term Labor government looks like. And I think another 3 years of Labor at a federal level will end up doing a lot of damage baked into the national economy, which will take a lot to undo.
How do you unite Australians? I've spent some time in the US. It felt like over there, the left and the right have never been further apart, and I feel like that's the same here now. How do you bring Australians together?
Well, but first of all, I think we've got to be proud and we've got to restore national pride in our country. I think we've been taught for too long to be ashamed of our history, where we live in the greatest country in the world. We've got parts of our history that we should recognise and that we should spend a lot of time talking about, but we can't relive that. And I firmly believe that if we're dividing people into different groupings, it's impossible to be the best that we can be. And I think we unite as a people. We've got an incredible migrant story, which we barely talk about. You think about, your family's history. I was talking to your dad yesterday, born in Europe, and you think of the migrant story coming to our country since the end of the Second World War. People who came with literally nothing, a suitcase with a couple of shirts in it, and they've now educated their kids. The next generation have been incredibly successful as well. I think we need to talk more about that instead of, beating ourselves up about our history and accept that we have a very proud Indigenous heritage. But that's a part of and a very important part of our story. But so too is our migrant story, and I want to talk about more of that and celebrate those great stories of people who have been labourers and brickies and carpenters and concreters and tilers and people who have been medical researchers and educators, etc., and celebrate instead of, sort of continually talking ourselves down.
I would like to see us really teach First Nations history in school, though. I think it's really important, and we can't move forward until we really understand the full story. Mm-hmm. And I think most Australians have the capacity to look back and forward. At the same time,
100%.
Kirribilli House, you've said you're going to, if it all goes well, as opposed to the Lodge, will you be the first PM to work from home? Is that what's happening here?
Well, I try and go for a walk or go to the gym each morning. Not immediately obvious. Although you've lost a fair bit of weight, Mick. Is this true?
Oh, you had me at hello.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm changing my vote.
I go back a long way because I'm 54. But the Martin Molloy days. I was a big fan back in the day, so just a bit of a fanboy moment.
Wonderful.
But
thank you.
But you're always a solid bloke all those years, and
Yes,
you seem
I
to have trimmed down a bit. So
I'm like in a booper.
So I don't think it matters where I am. The before and after shots. I don't really. Yeah, mate. I said that's my routine. The start to the day. Luke Darcy, who have become good mates with over the years.
Yes.
Taught me meditation. I start with that in the morning, so it doesn't really matter where I am.
He taught you how to meditate.
Yeah,
Luke Darcy.
I think for me it's an important thing because it helps you clear your mind. So wherever you are, wherever you're living, it doesn't matter. I think that routine is important, and I go into the office every day, and I don't. If I worked from home, which I mean, you obviously forced to do over COVID, but I reckon I'd be about 150 kilos by week 2 because I want to eat when I'm at home, and if I'm at work, you're sort of too busy and you can get through the day without heading to the fridge 10 times. So no, turning up to work I enjoy.
You mentioned Luke Darcy, great friend of the show, obviously from the hot breakfast days here at the
glory days. The glory days,
as
he refers to it, I'm sure.
We're trying to get back there, Mr. Dutton. Have you had a serious conversation outside of your friendship with Luke about him potentially running for a seat?
Mate, I think I have a friendship with Darcy because I haven't raised that with him. I just think he's way too smart. He's not. There's no way in the world he's giving up his lifestyle to come in. And to watch Sam do well now is pretty amazing, incredible. So 3 generations, and I mean, but the thing about Darcy in my mind, and Nick, similarly with you, and and others, the way to take the greatness off the field, into family life and into business life. When you look at what Darcy's done with his professional life, now podcasts, etc., it's a pretty impressive formula. And again, I think that inspiration for a lot of young kids would help some get through, a period where they need that role model and the rest of it. And I think we should be doing more to promote that positive role model, particularly for young boys who, under a lot of pressure.
Thanks for coming in today. We really appreciate your time. We hope you'll come back and speak to us closer to the pointy end of all this. Where are you off to now? What's the big ticket item today?
On the Sky Bus because there's no rail loop? Or?
There's no rail loop, but we are going to build the missing piece of infrastructure in Victoria, which I think is going to be a cracking asset. It's $13 billion for the airport link, and that'll take traffic off the Tullamarine. It'll help people get home sooner in the afternoon. So, and I think there's a lot of support in the north and the west for it. So, so that's a big thing. We'll be talking about that again today, and we're out and about, and then we hit the road again this afternoon.
Thanks for your
Mr.
time,
Dutton.
Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you.